The projection screen was still glowing when all 9 of them stood up at the same time. Not one by one, all at once, like they had rehearsed it. I was mid-sentence, talking about defect patterns in the pressure valve assembly, when I heard the chairs scraping back across the floor. I looked up. Every single executive in that room was on their feet, gathering their tablets, their notebooks, their coffee cups. Not one of them looked at me. Philip Drayton, our COO, was the one who spoke. He didn't even turn around when he said it. We're done listening to his failures. That was it. No debate. No questions. Just 9 people walking out in a tight cluster, their shoes clicking against the floor in the kind of silence that makes a room feel much bigger than it is. Rodney Aldrich, the CFO, was last. He stopped at the light switch, put his hand on it, looked at me for a second, then he flipped it off and walked out. The room went dark except for the glow of my presentation still up on the screen behind me. Quality failures, falsified test records, suppressed incident reports, everything they didn't want anyone to see, lit up on a wall in an empty room. I sat there for about 30 seconds. Then I picked up my phone, scrolled to a number I had saved weeks earlier, and pressed call. When she picked up, I said 7 words. They did exactly what you said they would. A pause then, all of them, every single one, and it's all on record. Give me 4 hours. I hung up and leaned back in my chair, staring at that glowing screen. I wasn't angry, I wasn't shaken. I had been waiting for this exact moment for 3 months. My name is Walter Hale. I'm 49 years old, and until recently I was the Quality Assurance Director at Hartwell Industrial Systems, a mid-sized manufacturer based in Charlotte, NC. We made industrial and medical equipment, pressure systems, monitoring hardware, valve assemblies, the kind of equipment that ends up in hospitals, government buildings, schools, the kind people never think twice about until something goes wrong. I didn't walk into Hartwell looking for a fight. My reputation in this industry was built on fixing broken systems quietly, finding the problems, correcting the process, moving on without drama. Companies hired me because I got results without burning the place down. Philip Drayton hired me with a handshake and a speech about fresh eyes and minor inefficiencies. He said they needed someone with integrity. I believed him. I shouldn't have. My father spent 28 years as a plant engineer at a manufacturing facility 2 towns over from where I grew up. When I was 19, there was an accident, a pressure failure that the safety logs showed had been flagged internally 6 months earlier and quietly buried. 3 people were hurt. The plant closed 18 months later. My father never really talked about it, but I watched what it did to him. That's the thing that stays with you. The first red flag at Hartwell came during my 2nd week. My predecessor, a man named Stuart Mercer, had left abruptly. They told me health reasons. His office had been cleared out in under 48 hours, which is fast by any standard. When I asked about his documentation and handover files, I got a lot of vague answers about his unique system that hadn't been properly transferred before his departure. The second flag came from a quality technician named Marlene. She had been at Hartwell for 8 years. Sharp knew the production floor better than anyone in management. During my first facility walkthrough, she was the one showing me around, and her answers were tight and precise until we reached the testing lab. When I asked about their validation protocols, her eyes moved to a camera mounted in the corner before she responded. "We follow established company procedures," she said. Flat rehearsed. I noted it and kept moving. By the end of week 3, I had found test records that didn't match production outputs. Equipment that had failed critical safety checks was leaving the facility with approval signatures on it. When I flagged this with my team in a closed meeting, nobody said anything. They just sat there looking at the table. I requested a private meeting with Philip. He smiled the whole time. Previous leadership complicated things unnecessarily, he told me. Just follow established protocols and you'll be fine here. The next morning, $22,000 appeared in my company account, no explanation. No email, no memo, just the money sitting there like it was supposed to be there. I declined the transfer and kept digging. What I found over the following weeks was not a few isolated problems. It was a system. The medical equipment line had real safety flaws that were being deliberately concealed. Testing parameters had been quietly modified to hide defects before final inspection. Customer complaints were being flagged and redirected before they reached anyone with actual authority to act on them. And when a pressure monitoring unit failed in an operating room in Portland 14 months earlier, injuring 2 surgical staff members, the incident had been internally classified as user error. The documentation proving otherwise, service logs, calibration records, internal communications had been altered. This was not sloppy management. This was coordinated. Carolyn Voss, the VP of Operations, called me into her office when I started pushing harder. She had a folder on her desk. Inside was a revised employment contract with a significant salary increase and a confidentiality clause written so broadly it covered basically everything I had been looking into. "Every industry has acceptable margins," she said, sliding it across the desk. "We reward people who understand that." I took the contract, told her I needed a few days to review it, and went back to my office and kept working. That same night, I got an anonymous email. It contained copies of original safety reports, unaltered versions that no longer matched what was sitting in our official records. The message attached to them was 6 words: "Stuart Mercer did not leave voluntarily." I spent the next 3 days tracking down Stuart's wife through a mutual contact I had in the industry, a former colleague who had worked with Stuart at a previous company. I did not call her out of nowhere. I had my contact reach out first, explain who I was and what I was looking into, and ask if she would be willing to speak with me. She agreed to a phone call. Her name was Beverly Mercer. She was careful at first, measured, the way someone talks when they have been warned by attorneys to watch what they say. But about 10 minutes into the conversation, something shifted. I think she had been waiting a long time for someone to actually ask. Stuart had been given a choice, she told me: sign a settlement with a full gag order attached, or face fraud charges that the company had the resources to manufacture and sustain long enough to destroy him financially. He signed. He had a family. He did not have the kind of money needed to fight Hartwell's legal team for 2 or 3 years. She said he still woke up most nights, that he had not worked in the industry since. His last act before leaving Hartwell was to encrypt a complete set of files, everything he had documented over his final 7 months, altered test records, internal communications, financial patterns, incident reports. He set up a dead man's switch tied to a digital timer. If he did not reset it every 30 days, the files would automatically be sent to 3 addresses: a federal regulatory investigator and 2 investigative journalists he had identified as covering industrial safety issues. He had been resetting that timer every month, holding on, not sure what else to do. When I reached out to him through Beverly, he made a decision. He stopped resetting it. 72 hours later, the files went out automatically to all 3 addresses. He had not violated his gag order. The system had simply done what it was built to do. One of those addresses belonged to Judith Reeves. Judith was a senior investigator with the Federal Regulatory Enforcement Division that oversaw our industry. She had been building a case against Hartwell for 14 months before I ever walked through their front door. She had the framework, she had the timeline. What she did not have was someone currently inside the company who could provide real-time context and help connect the documented patterns to specific decisions being made right now. Our first conversation lasted just under 2 hours. By the end of it, we had a plan, and I understood exactly what my role in it was going to be. I was not going to leak anything to journalists. I was not going to make noise. I was going to do my job, keep building my own documentation through proper internal channels, and give the executives every opportunity to incriminate themselves on record. Judith's team already had warrants in place covering specific communications. All we needed was for the right people to keep talking. I spent the next 9 weeks running 2 tracks at the same time. On the surface, I was the cooperative new QA director, filing reports, attending meetings, raising concerns through official channels, looking like a man who was slowly figuring out that the system around him was bigger than his principles. Underneath that, I was feeding Judith's team a steady stream of documented evidence gathered entirely through legitimate means. I also placed a small recording device in my office. Single-party consent recording is legal in North Carolina. I turned it on during my 3rd week and left it running. About 5 weeks in, I set up the trap I was most proud of. I created a fake internal memo. It looked exactly like a standard QA document, formatted correctly, filed properly with the right headers and reference numbers, but the content was fabricated. It described a quality issue in a 3rd product line that had no real problems. The numbers were invented. The incident references were fictional. I prepared it carefully enough that it would look credible to someone who wasn't going to read it closely. Then I left it visible on my desk during a routine check-in meeting with Philip. I didn't mention it, didn't draw attention to it, just let it sit there in his line of sight while we talked about something else. 2 days later, Philip forwarded that memo to his personal attorney with a note asking how to handle it. Judith's team had been monitoring that attorney's communications with Philip under a warrant they had obtained 4 months earlier based on earlier evidence. That forward did something specific and important. It proved that Philip understood certain categories of product information were legally sensitive and required active management. He had seen a document about a product line with supposed problems and immediately moved to contain it, without asking me a single question about whether the issue was real. He had handed us proof of his awareness and intent without us having to argue for it. I didn't tell anyone what I had done. I just noted the date and added it to the file. The morning of the executive presentation, Marlene found me in the parking garage before I reached the elevator. She looked like she hadn't slept. She kept watching the entrance while she talked. They're setting you up, she said. Philip already has your termination paperwork drafted. They've told people your report is exaggerated attention-seeking. Nobody in that room is going to listen. I asked her why she was telling me this. She was quiet for a second. Because Stuart tried to do the right thing too, she said, and he didn't deserve what they did to him. She walked away before I could say anything else. I took the elevator up and made one final adjustment to my presentation before the meeting started. I removed the single most damaging slide, the one with the full Portland incident reconstruction, the altered service records side by side with the originals. I wasn't going to show that to the executives. I was saving it for the board. The walkout played out almost exactly as Judith and I had mapped it. The only thing I hadn't predicted was Rodney at the light switch, that detail I hadn't planned for. But Hartwell's own archival system had captured every word of it. Company policy, section 4.3, required automatic audio recording of all executive conference rooms for internal record keeping. I had read that policy during my first week. I had not forgotten it. After the room emptied, I made my call, said my 7 words, and waited. About 20 minutes later, Carolyn walked into my office. She had not knocked. She came in, sat down in my chair like it was already hers, and turned my monitor slightly toward herself before looking up at me. I had expected this. Philip would not come himself. He would send someone who could deliver the message cleanly and deny the conversation afterward if needed. Carolyn was good at that. That was quite a performance, she said. I was presenting data, I said. That's what I was hired to do. She opened a folder she had brought with her. Inside was a termination letter, already signed by Philip, already dated. She slid it across the desk without looking at it. Your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. Security will be up in 20 minutes. Any materials you have gathered here, notes, files, copies of internal documents, stay in this building. All work product created during your employment is company property. Everything, she added. The word came out flat and final. I understand, I said. She watched me for a moment. I think she was expecting something different. Anger, maybe, or the kind of careful negotiating a man does when he's trying to figure out his options. What she got was nothing. I just looked back at her. That seemed to bother her more than an argument would have. Walter, she said, leaning forward slightly, I want you to understand what you're walking into. Philip has relationships across this entire industry. Rodney sits on 3 compensation committees at peer companies. You will not find another position at this level. Not in this sector, not after today. Is that a threat? I asked. It's a fact. She straightened her jacket. I actually argued for hiring you, if you want to know the truth. Your reputation was solid, but you misread the assignment. Your job was to fix the perception problem, not create a new one. She moved toward the door. Then she stopped, and this was the moment I had been waiting for without knowing exactly when it would come. The Portland situation was handled, she said. That file is closed. Whatever you think you found, it doesn't change what was decided at the time. She walked out. I opened my desk drawer, took out the recorder, and put it in my jacket pocket. She had just named Portland on tape without any prompting from me. I had not steered the conversation there. She had walked herself into it. My phone buzzed, a message from Judith. 4 agents arriving now. Lobby in 10. I gathered a few personal items, just enough to look like a man collecting his things before being walked out, and headed for the elevator. Most of my team was at their desks. A few of them watched me pass. Some of them looked like they felt bad about it. Others looked relieved it wasn't them. Marlene was near the elevator bank. She fell into step beside me for a few seconds. They're already telling people you tried to blame production for design flaws, she said quietly. Philip announced your replacement is being brought in from outside. I pressed the button. Interesting timing. What are you going to do? The elevator doors opened. Sometimes you have to let people believe they've won, I said, before they figure out they haven't. The lobby was busy with the usual afternoon traffic when the front doors opened and 4 people in dark suits walked in. Judith was at the front. Her badge was already out before she reached the security desk. Regulatory Enforcement Division. We have a federal warrant to access specific company records and conduct interviews. The security guard reached for his phone immediately. Within 2 minutes, someone from legal was jogging across the lobby floor toward Judith with his hand out asking to see the paperwork. She handed it to him without breaking stride and kept talking to her team. Philip appeared from the elevator bank about 4 minutes later. Red-faced, moving fast, already talking to a junior attorney who looked like he was trying to keep up physically and professionally at the same time. When Philip spotted me standing near the far end of the reception desk, he cut across the lobby directly toward me. You have no idea what you have done, he said. His voice was low, controlled, the way a man talks when he wants to sound calm but isn't. You signed confidentiality agreements, he continued. Anything you have shared with outside parties is a material breach. Our attorney's will was provided through mandatory regulatory reporting channels, I said. Nothing outside standard federal disclosure requirements. He stopped. I watched him work through it. He had been expecting a leak, a tip to a journalist, something with a clear legal target he could go after. What I had done instead was follow the law exactly as written. I had reported credible safety violations to the appropriate federal agency. There was no breach. There was no angle. "You will never work in this industry again," he said. Judith stepped in beside me. "Mr. Hale will be staying on site to assist our investigation. We have questions about the presentation that was interrupted earlier today." Philip looked at me one more time. Then he turned and walked back toward his attorneys. The next 4 hours moved with a kind of quiet efficiency that I hadn't expected. Judith's team knew exactly what they were looking for and where to find it. Servers were imaged, filing systems were locked down. Executives were separated into different conference rooms for individual interviews so they couldn't coordinate their stories in real time. I sat in a small room on the 4th floor with 2 of Judith's investigators, walking through the timeline from my first week forward. I had brought a printed index of every document I had filed through official channels over the previous 3 months, organized by date and cross-reference to the specific safety standards each one addressed. They worked through it methodically. I answered questions and let them do their job. Through the glass wall, I could see activity spreading across the floor. Employees standing in clusters, watching, managers on phones they weren't supposed to be using, a whiteboard being wheeled into the main conference room down the hall, already covered in names and dates and connecting lines. At 4:30, Rodney was escorted from his office by 2 of Judith's agents. He was carrying his jacket over one arm and looking at the floor. He did not look up as they walked past the room where I was sitting. By 5:15, 5 more executives had been walked out of their offices, not in handcuffs, but clearly no longer in control of anything. When Philip passed the glass wall, he stopped for a moment and looked directly at me. I don't know what he expected to see. Whatever it was, I don't think he found it. He kept walking. Howard Finch, the board chair, asked me to come up to the executive floor at around 6. Just the 2 of us in his office, the building mostly quiet by then. "You have been planning this since the beginning," he said. It wasn't a question. "Since week 3, I told him." Once I understood what was actually happening here, there were only 2 options: become part of it or bring it down. He was quiet for a moment. "You could have come to me directly, could I have?" I said. Howard, 2 board members signed off on the modified testing protocols. Their signatures are on the approval documents. I had no way of knowing at the time which parts of the board were aware and which weren't. I wasn't willing to tip my hand to the wrong person. He didn't argue with that. He nodded slowly, the way a man does when he knows you're right and doesn't particularly enjoy it. "What happens now?" he asked. "That depends on the board and the federal process. The company can survive this, but not with the same leadership structure and not with the same priorities. And you, my resignation will be on your desk tomorrow morning." My work here is finished. The next morning I watched the news from my apartment, footage of search warrants being executed at private residences. Financial analysts on 3 different channels talking about the Hartwell situation. Trading of company stock had been suspended at market open. Class action attorneys were already making statements. By mid-morning, 6 resignation letters had been submitted. 0.5 preliminary charges had been filed by federal prosecutors, with more expected as the investigation continued. The stock had dropped 37% before the suspension. I made coffee and watched it unfold from my couch. Here's what I want to say about all of it now that it's done. This was never about the conference room. It was not about Philip turning the lights off or Rodney's parting shot at the door or the $22,000 that appeared in my account like a quiet little test of my character. Those things were insulting, but insults were not the point. The point was the 2 people injured in that Portland operating room who were told by the company that they had misused the equipment. The point was the hospitals and schools and government buildings full of people who trusted that the safety certifications on Hartwell's products meant something real. The point was Stuart Mercer, who tried to do the right thing, paid a serious price for it, and spent months resetting a timer in the hope that someone would eventually finish what he had started. I finished it. 2 days later, my phone rang. Unfamiliar number with a Charlotte area code. "Mr. Hale, this is Gerald Oakes. I'm with the Patient Safety Division at Memorial Hospital. We have been following the Hartwell situation closely, and we would like to speak with you about a consulting role, specifically helping hospitals assess and address compromised industrial equipment. Would you be open to a conversation?" I looked out the window at the city. "Yes," I said, "I would. I have thought a lot about what actually happened in that conference room." 9 people stood up and walked out believing that their unified front made them untouchable. They had done it before. It had worked before. They expected it to work again. What they didn't know was that the walkout itself was the last piece I needed. Their coordinated exit, captured on Hartwell's own recording system, established a pattern of deliberate suppression that tied every person in that room to the cover-up. They thought they were demonstrating power. They were signing their names to everything. If you have made it this far, I want you to know something. Most people in that situation don't fight back because they believe the system is too big and too connected and too practiced at protecting itself. And sometimes that's true, but not always. Sometimes the system has cracks in it, and sometimes those cracks line up just right. And sometimes one person who is willing to be patient and careful and methodical can walk through all of them. It takes longer than anger. It takes more discipline than a confrontation, but it holds up in court, and it stays done. Hit the like button if this story resonated with you, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. If you have ever faced something like this at work, drop a comment below. You would be surprised how many people have sat in that same kind of room, in that same kind of dark, trying to decide what to do next.